Welcome to Really American. I am Michael Hayne. Don't blink now, but I believe we have but a little over a month left before we can hopefully finally put an end to this sickening, horrific 8-year nightmare that is Trumpty Dumpty. By the way, I've actually started preparing for Halloween, and I just got the scariest decoration ever, as you can see right here. Now, there's a great many things that I never could quite grasp when it comes to Trumpy Dumpty. Chief among them is how a bunch of broke ass rednecks and essentially hard working class people who are lucky if they probably make $50,000 a year and predominantly probably are living on government assistance, case in point, West Virginia, can somehow devote their entire existence and personalities to a dude who has never worked a day in his life, has ripped off contractors, who basically wouldn't walk on their corpse to avoid a puddle. But what I never also could quite understand is that somehow Donald Trump, this 6 times bankruptcy king, who never actually successfully managed anything, well, his only successful business was selling made in China cult merchandise to said redneck rubes. But really, that he somehow can be trusted more on the economy. Fox News, which of course tends to be, the pro Trump network, but every now and then it'll slip through and you'll have like a somewhat more classic Republican in the vein of Neil Cavuto, for example. He actually is also puzzled as to how Trump is somehow the king of the stock market and somehow the economy does better under him. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Mike, I know, and you do not politicize these things, but the Donald Trump thing in the market amazes me. When they're up, it's all because of him and looking forward to him. When they're down, it's all because the Democrats and how horrific they are. Yet some of our biggest point fall-offs, 3 of the biggest of the top 10, occurred during his administration. Now, a lot of those were in the COVID years. I get that. But, you either own the markets or you don't. It does confuse me, but thank you.
It's almost like you're admitting that whenever times are good and Trumpy Dumpty has nothing to do with it, he claims the success and takes credit for it. But if things go south and things aren't going well economically or pretty much any type of situation, Trumpy Dumpty cries, screams, pouts, and blames Democrats. Could this possibly be the case with Truth Social? How the entire markets were soaring last week, but Trumpy Dumpty's crappy scam company Truth Social stock was crashing. And now this whole idea that somehow the Trump administration created this amazing economy, like that it wasn't, handed a bullish economy from Obama, and that it somehow kept it going and accelerated the economy, is another piece of utter bullshit. Because according to the Economic Policy Institute, the Trump administration was running the pre-COVID 19 economy too, just more slowly. Some takeaways were long before the COVID 19 pandemic that the Trump administration was squandering the pockets of strength in the American economy it inherited. Broad-based prosperity requires strength on the supply, demand, and distributive sides of the economy. And Trump administration policies were either weak or outright damaging on these fronts. When it comes to demand, most of the Trump tax cuts, as we know, went to already rich corporations and households who tend to save rather than spend most of any extra dollar they're given. Of course, it went to stock buybacks as well. Supply. Business investment plummeted under the Trump administration, despite their lavishing tax cuts on corporate business. When it comes to distribution, the Trump administration undercut labor standards and rules that can buttress workers' bargaining power. The fact remains that Trump's last year in office, he managed to push the Federal Reserve to inject loads of money into the economy during the pandemic. This, of course, caused the money supply to rise by roughly 25%, the biggest jump in United States history. And by early 2021, inflation had basically soared to over 8%. Even though Biden worked to reduce it, created the Inflation Reduction Act, which, by the way, all of the Republicans voted against because, again, do as I say, not as I do, managed to bring inflation, the consumer price index, below 3%. The damage was already done. Prices remain high. showing that while Biden could slow inflation and did slow inflation, fixing the monumental shit show that Donald Trump created wasn't going to be quite the easy task.
Show up. Financial Times, this is actually a big deal. This is a Michigan Ross poll on the economy. Who do you trust more on the economy? Harris beating Trump, even by 2 points. It's margin of error, but whoa. Who do you trust more to lower costs? Harris, 1 point over Trump. Who do you trust? Who represents the middle class more? Harris, who is middle class, versus Trump. That should be what it is, but it is shocking. Democrats never win these kind of polls. Tom, what's happening?
Well, and, this is sort of a late breaker because, as you allude to, that Donald Trump had been leading, and Republicans generally lead in these economic indicators. And generally, whoever is not in power is going to have a little bit of an advantage there. Even though we saw Vice President Harris surging in the polls after July 21st, those numbers weren't moving as quickly. What we've seen since the debate is more movement on those economic numbers in a very positive way. I think the debate had a huge bearing on that. You saw one candidate, Vice President Harris, who actually had an agenda and was talking about people like her and that she was there to run to represent the average voter. And Donald Trump, we all saw what he did. He certainly wasn't there to represent the average American.
Yeah, she keeps saying, I'm a middle class person. I'm a middle class kid. Like, that seems like a powerful rebuke to Donald Trump's whole brand is that he's a billionaire. So he can't even pretend. Like, he says he's a billionaire, even if he's not.
Who would think that the sane, rational, competent, young, normal, decent, moral prosecutor lady who actually laid out concrete plans, not a concept of a plan, regarding the economy and actually helping middle-class working people, the ones who think that the billionaire is going to help them out, versus the guy who ranted and raved about immigrants eating dogs and cats. Who would think that now that lady would be doing better and more trusted on the economy? It's actually interesting. When it comes to the economy and what party favors better, I think there's actually somebody who tends to agree that Democrats do better. And I believe that person was Donald Trump.
I've been now around long. I think of myself as a young guy, but I'm not so young anymore. And I've been around for a long time. And it just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans. Now, it shouldn't be that way. But if you go back, it just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats
Well,
than the
it certainly
Republicans.
did well under Clinton.
Well,
but I wouldn't suggest it was so great under Jimmy Carter.
That's true. That's
if
true.
you remember
That's
the interest
true.
rates.
No, I know. It's Jimmy Carter was not in the same thing, but certainly we had some very good economies under Democrats as well as Republicans. But we've had some pretty bad disaster under the Republicans.
And of course, Trump-tards will say, that's not the real Trump. That's Antifa Trump. That's Hillary or Obama in a Trump mask. Anyway, I am Michael Hayne. This is Really American. If you like our content, hit that subscribe button and check me out on TikTok at Mike Hayne Comedian. Talk to you later.